Hey, thanks for listening to the Curious Jord podcast. My name is Jordan, and in each episode I sit down with an interesting person and we have a conversation about their story or area of expertise. For past episodes, be sure to check out the archive on your podcast app or have a gander at my website, which is www.curiousjord.com. On this week's episode, I sit down with Keith Vokey. Keith has an interesting job. He's a master of ceremonies of sorts. Keith welcomes honorary Newfoundlanders to our province via a provincial ritual known as a Screech. I won't go into too much detail because Keith lays it out quite nicely in the show. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Screech Master Keith Vokey. All right, we're going.
Okay.
Thanks for coming down here, Keith.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. We're in the little sound chamber here. It's a little freaky.
It's cozy, isn't it?
It's cozy, yeah. We're sitting about 2 feet apart from each other in a utility closet. So yeah, I wanted to get you down here to talk about screeching or being screeched in. But before we get into the specifics of your role, I want you to describe for people who have no idea what a screeching is, what it is essentially.
Okay. Well, I guess first of all, it's a ceremony meant to welcome people to Newfoundland, during which you learn a little bit about our culture, have a little bit of fun, made at you, possibly. And through the course of it, the end result is that you walk away being an honorary Newfoundlander. There are various things and elements of part of it. The way I do it, there's songs and stories, some jokes, a little bit of food, and some shenanigans.
Lots of shenanigans from what I've seen.
Lots of shenanigans, yeah.
So like, just walk us through like the specifics.
Okay. Well, normally I'll call the meeting to order, kind of thing. I'll treat it somewhat formally right at the beginning, and then find out where everybody's from. Because of course, in order to become an honorary Newfoundlander, you have to be from away. So I find out where everybody's from and have a little chat about that. Then I would normally ask them if they know anything about Newfoundland culture, or like scoff and a scuff, and what those terms mean. Most of the time, of course, they don't, so I'll explain that to them. And then just to give them kind of a sort of idea of what it might be to be in somebody's kitchen and singing some songs, I'll sing a few tunes myself, and then get either individuals to perform, if I know there's individuals there that might want to perform, or if it's a smaller group. If it's a large group, I'll do a sing-song kind of thing.
Sorry to cut in, but this is all taking place in a bar usually.
Usually it is, yeah. I do them at weddings and conferences and stuff as well, okay. But yeah, my usual spot would be at the bar, yeah.
Okay.
And okay, so where was I?
Sorry, you were just getting to know people if they knew like some Newfoundland stuff or...
Right, yeah, and singing the songs and whatnot. After that, then I'll generally have a chat with 2 or 3 people, ask them where they're from, ask them about where they're from, what it's like where they are, and then I'll throw in a couple of jokes, have a little bit more fun with them. I'm trying to think now what I might do. Like, it depends on the evening too, right? It depends. A lot of times, the reason why I like to do it is because you get to meet people, and if you get somebody that's a good, a good head kind of thing, they're a lot of fun to have around. And you can have a little back and forth with them. If you get somebody that's a little bit more uptight, it ends up being very quick. But so you get through that kind of getting to know you phase with 2 or 3 people, and then I bring out the prog, which is the food, and get them to eat some, generally some bologna. If they're vegetarian, it can be hardtack, but something traditionally Newfoundland food. And then I'll get them down on their knees, get them to kiss a fish. And
It's an actual fish. It's not a euphemism for something else.
it is an actual fish. Yeah. The state of the fish depends on the time of year and, the abundance of and availability of fish. But yeah, it is a real fish. And so I'll get them to kiss the fish. They do the shot of Screech, of course, which is a rum. And it got a very fearsome reputation back in the 30s and 40s as being a very strong kind of rum. These days, it's more about marketing, I think, than anything, because it's a relatively nice rum. I drink it all the time.
Yeah, people ask me, and I'm like, it's not that bad.
No, yeah, the Screech part of it, I think, is more marketing now than anything. But so that they'll drink the shot of Screech, and then after I test them, I test everybody on what they've seen and what they've heard, and if they all pass, then they're welcomed into the Society of Newfoundland, Royal Society of Newfoundland Screechers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
awesome. That's a pretty good job of laying it out. While this is happening, what are you wearing and what are you holding?
I will generally come out wearing full oilskins, full fisherman oilskins, the sou'wester and the oilskins. I started off because my father used to use an oar. I used to use an oar all the time as well. And I found quickly that, it got in my way because I had to keep it in my hand. There was very few places to put it down where it was safe, where people wouldn't trip over it or whatever. And B, it never really got people moving and clapping. So I switched over to a paddle. And now I have a paddle that I essentially use as another hand. Just,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the paddle because I was downtown the other day and I saw you going off with your duffel bag and the paddle.
Okay.
And I couldn't quite remember what you look like. I'd been to Christians before while the screeching was happening. But of course, if you're at Christian's late at night, things get blurry.
Sure, fair enough.
So I saw you walking down the street and I'm like, I think that's that guy. And then I saw the paddle and that confirmed it. I was like, who else would have that?
It's hard to hide a paddle. Yeah. Everything else is kind of contained and I can, sneak into most places. Like if I'm doing a wedding or a conference or something, I got to leave the paddle in the car though, till the last minute because everybody sees the paddle and like, oh, here we go, screeching. Right. So,
yeah. So what's the origins of the ceremony? I mean, Newfoundland has a lot of wacky traditions, but like, where'd this one come from?
A few different places. The story, as I understand it, is Screech came from like I said, the early 30s and 40s, when there was the U.S. Air Force Base, and at the time there was a lot of swish barrel rum, like a lot of really hard stuff, and there was no consistency to its quality, so you never knew what you were getting, and that was always kind of a test of a person to swallow back a little bit of the local grog. And then back in the late 60s, the Liquor Corporation developed Screech, the marketable bottle Screech. And they started doing Screech-ins, which was you go into a liquor store and you do a shot of Screech and they would give you a certificate saying that you got Screeched in.
Cool.
This is as I understand it, and so what happened is roughly around the same time, my father created a ceremony based on, he was doing teacher conferences, and he found himself having to entertain teachers a lot in the summer. They would always have a talent night on the second last night of this particular conference that Dad was an organizer for. And Dad at the time when he was doing it, he had lots of company doing it, but he came back hosting it to Newfoundland one time. And all of his partners in crime, all of his musician and comedian kind of friends had all left him. So Dad created a ceremony, made up a trophy out of nets and shells and made a lighthouse. And people had to compete, actually, to become an honorary Newfoundlander. And whoever was the best Newfoundlander got the trophy kind of thing.
Nice.
And so Dad got asked to do that again. It was, like I said, a whole pile of shenanigans, jokes and stories and songs and whatever. And it went off really well. And a couple of months later, Dad was asked to do it again. So he made up another trophy. And a few months later, he was asked to do it again, made up another trophy. And eventually he said, just shag the trophy. I'm just going to make everybody an honorary Newfoundlander.
Yeah.
And so that's what he did. And as it grew in popularity, the Liquor Corporation saw and heard what my father was doing and asked if they could adopt that to the Screeching. And as far as Dad knew, he was like he wasn't developing anything in and of itself. So he just said, "Yeah, sure, go right ahead."
So is your father the originator of it?
He's so yes and no. Like there were other people doing things, but Dad was the person that created all the elements that make it popular. He was the one that introduced the fish and the saying "Deed I is me old cock and long may your big jib draw." Right? I mean, like Deed I is existed before that, of course, and me old cock existed, and long may your big jib draw did. But Dad was the first person to kind of put all that together. And
Okay.
yeah.
For anyone who's not familiar with the Newfoundland tongue, that's just a string of somewhat common sayings, essentially used to confuse come-from-away people.
Well, that's what it is for now. Yeah. Absolutely.
I had someone. I'm from Toronto originally, but my parents are from here, so I've spent like a great deal of time in Newfoundland. So I'm aware of a lot of the dialect and like the sayings. The other day at work, someone said, knowing I was from Toronto, was like, "Ours out near your pants," and I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yours coming out near your pants." And I'm like looking at my legs and stuff, and he starts laughing, and I'm just like, "Oh, you got me." Like, I was like, "What does that even mean?" He's like, "Doesn't mean anything. It's just meant to confuse people." I think in the ceremonies that I have seen, that probably confuses people the most. Is that your experience?
The deed I kind of almost hinge my ceremony on that.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. That's great. So how many like ceremonies have you done?
Oh my God.
How long have you been doing it for?
I've been doing them since early to mid 90s, I guess, is when I first started doing them. I've been doing them at Christians. Essentially, I started the tradition at Christians doing the Screechins there, and that was about, I think it was about 2000 when I started doing them there. I've been there ever since, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I'd say I average probably 200 to 250 ceremonies a year, shall we say?
Wow.
Yeah, I probably do a couple of hundred at Christians and maybe 40 or 50 like weddings and conferences and stuff throughout the year.
Summertime must be just crazy then for you.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's huge in the summer. It's pretty dead in the winter. So
yeah,
you take it as it comes, and that's it. Yeah.
So, you're the guy at Christians, and you do conferences and stuff. There's other Screechians in town. Those are different guys. Are you friends with them? Is there a legion of screeching?
I don't know about a legion, so to say, and I'm friends with a number of them, not all of them, obviously, but yeah, some of them we get along quite well, and yeah, absolutely. They've asked to borrow things from me, and if I can, I'll help them out with it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a cough.
That's all right.
Pardon me.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I was wondering before I started talking to you if there like feuds between Screechers or.
I've never had a feud with anyone.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people take umbrage with something. Like there are some things that I see some Screechers do that I particularly don't agree with.
Such as.
Well, sometimes they'll get the person to do the saying, and if they mess up the saying, they have to do another shot of Screech, and if they mess it up again, they do another shot of Screech, and eventually you can get close to alcohol poisoning on some of these people when they mess it up. And so for that, like, I don't like that practice. Or I know Aunt Luce, not Aunt Luce. Is it Aunt Luce down at the Ye Old Inn? No, Aunt Luce is out on the West Coast. Yeah. Like she fops people on the head with a spoon every time they mess it up. The saying, right? Like she'll fop them on the head. And again, that's something that I wouldn't do. She gets away with it, I think, because it's part of her personality. I wouldn't do it because if I did that, I'd get hit back probably, right?
Yeah.
So,
okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So what makes like a good head, as you were saying, in the crowd?
Well, generally, what's happening for me when I'm singing my songs, I'm just looking at people around me and seeing who's actively taking part, who's not taking part. If somebody looks like they're having a good time and they're having fun and they look relaxed and open and easy to get along with, that's the kind of person that I'm generally looking for, as to help me move the Screech in along kind of thing. That's what I would call a good head. Somebody that's relaxed and
Yeah.
approachable.
Have you, like, what's one of the weirdest experiences or ceremonies you could think of? You must have a handful.
Well, like I said, occasionally, like if it's a smaller group, I will ask anybody if they can perform and do anything. Normally, you'll get like a song or sometimes a story or even a dance or something like that. But there was one time, and this is why now with larger groups, I never open up the floor like that unless I know there's particular people there that have certain talents or whatever. Because I opened up the floor one evening, and this guy proceeded to say that he had a talent and took a condom out of his pocket and put it over his head and blew it up by blowing through his nose.
Yeah.
Which I had seen a couple of times before on like videos and whatnot, but they were always kind of sped up and stuff. Anyways, it took this guy probably, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 minutes.
Oh, no.
So the energy of the show just like died. I mean, I did my best to keep it going for the first minute or two, but after, 4 or 5 quips, I was like, I'm out. So that was a pretty weird one. Yeah.
Christ. Yeah, that seems like it would be perfect right off the bat. But then, any more than 30 seconds in, you're like, whoop, the air is dead in here now.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally,
right. So, and then what do you do? Right. Like you've opened up the floor to them. You got to kind of let them make it or break it on their own sometimes,
Yeah.
So.
Let them embarrass themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Carry on.
Well, and that's true too. You always get those drunk people that, I love the ones that come up and try to tell me what to do, right? Like, no, you're doing this wrong. I'm like, really? Because I've been doing this for 20 years and never heard anybody say that before, right?
Yeah.
So
it seems too like it's a little bit open to interpretation for whoever's conducting it, because like you said, everyone does different things. And
absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some people have like a piece of bologna or, eat that, or I've seen people like flambe it and like give a piece of bologna and just whatever,
Yeah. Exactly. Right. It is what it is. The flambéing thing, I'm not really sure. I fully agree with that. Like, that's not how it was served back in the day. It was like a slab of bologna on bread, right? It might have been fried.
Representation of of the meat, that's for sure.
So yeah. So, but yeah, like to each their own, and everybody, develops their own style and signature bits of things that they do, kind of thing.
Do you find yourself mainly performing in the province, or do you go around? Or?
Oh, it's almost entirely in the province. I have done probably maybe 5 or 6 shows outside of the province.
Okay.
I generally don't like to, but hey, if somebody is willing to fly me somewhere, or, pay for my trip, I'll go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Do you ever get feedback from Newfoundlanders questioning whether or not you're misrepresenting aspects of Newfoundland?
Sure, all the time. Yeah.
What do they say?
Well, there's a lot of people that feel that it's an appropriation of our culture. My response to that is, it is a part of our culture now. Whether you like it or not, people come here searching for that now. And I think we owe it to ourselves as Newfoundlanders to put our best foot forward and take it and own it. And like I said, put our best foot forward and do our best presentation of it that we can. Like I said, whether it's an appropriation or not, it is now currently embedded in our culture. To pull it out and rip it out would take a lot of work, and I don't think people want it, to be quite honest. I know there are those that do want to see it gone, but I don't think that's the majority of people. And my response is too, like, if you come down here and that's what you're expecting to see as a come from away, that this is what Newfoundland is. They look around them, they see it. Like there's doctors, there's lawyers. We have everything that everybody else has. This is just one facet, one part of our culture. It's not the whole end all be all of our culture. It's not meant to be everything. It's just meant to be a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If someone comes here, goes to a bar, gets lit and sees you perform and thinks that is all of Newfoundland, then you let that person be dumb somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like that. It's like going to Hawaii and expecting everybody to wear grass skirts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It is kind of emblematic of the island, but it's not the end all be all of their culture and everything that they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had some friends visiting from away recently, And before they came down, my buddy was like, "Screeching necessary, not necessary," and then I didn't know how to respond. Like, what would you say? Well, you'd say come to the show, but
Well, yeah, I would encourage it, obviously, but again, to each their own. And even in the ceremony, like if I get somebody and they don't want to drink the Screech, like for me, nothing is make or break as far as going through the ceremony goes. If they don't want to kiss the fish, they don't kiss the fish.
yeah,
If they don't want to drink the Screech, they don't drink the Screech. Like I'm not there to force anything on anyone in any way. Like for me, it's supposed to be a bit of fun. It's a way to welcome people and introduce them a little bit to our culture in a fun, humorous way. And there's nothing that should be done to make somebody feel okay, kissing a fish makes a person feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm trying not to push them into into places where they feel hyper uncomfortable or anything like that. That's not the point. It's just supposed to have a bit of fun.
Yeah, for sure. You said earlier the state of the fish depends on the time of year. Like, what are the different states of the fish?
Oh well, like for instance, right now we're starting to see some fish come in now, right? And we'll get the odd fresh. People will bring them by. Like
really?
As soon as the fishery opens, people start bringing them by. Like, hey, I got a fish for tonight because I was getting my buddy screeching and I want it to be a nice fresh fish.
Yeah.
So I'll end up having probably like 8 or 10 fish by the end of the summer, right? And then those will get frozen and used throughout the winter because, of course, the fishery doesn't exist then. So you have to have fish then. So that they stay frozen throughout the winter. And, of course, as they occasionally get left out or whatever happens to them, they disappear. So by the end of just before the fishery opens again, you're scraping the barrel as far as the quality of the fish goes, shall we say.
So just on an ending note, I wanted to ask you what you thought of the future of screeching in, and do you see it continuing as a long-lasting tradition, or do you see it as a dying thing, or is your son going to become a screecher?
Well, that's entirely up to him, whether he wants to or not. I don't see it as dying. It seems to be the closest I think it got to dying was back in the 80s. I think when Clyde Wells took umbrage to the Screech, and he didn't like it, and he almost squashed it then. But even then, like he tried to get rid of it as premier, and it just wouldn't happen. And they ended up having to acquiesce, and instead of having the premier signature on the certificates, now it's the I guess the CEO for the NLC.
Okay,
or the president of the NLC or whatever.
It's still intertwined like that.
Yeah, it is. But before, it used to be the premier's signature was on the certificate, right?
Yeah.
And Clyde Wells said no, he wasn't going to do it, and tried to quash it, tried to get the certificates not printed anymore, tried to stop it all, and there was just too much pressure there for it to happen.
Yeah.
And so it continued on, and I see it growing. There's people now looking to do them. Numerous people, like 20 years ago, there might have been 4 or 5 people that I knew that did screechings, and now I'd say I know probably 20, 25 people, like not know them personally necessarily, but I know of them performing screechings. So
yeah, I think it's so, like you said, to try and take it out of the culture would be so silly, because it is now a part of the culture, even though it's an accentuation of certain aspects of the culture. That ceremony in itself is a part of Newfoundland tradition. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like it is there now. Like people say, well, it's not traditional. Well, traditions start somewhere,
exactly,
right? And so this one started, okay, maybe not so far back in the past that the older generations can't remember it, but it has become a tradition now, and that's it. Yeah.
Last summer I was at a wedding, and in the middle of the party after the wedding, my uncle came out with a sou'wester, and he came out with the Screech, and there was a couple people from away, screeched them all in. Like, everyone loved it. It was the coolest, like, exclamation mark on the wedding. It was, it was, the wedding was itself, of course, but then to add on that additional tradition to it was cherry on the cake,
I think so. Yeah, I think a lot of people, like that's a memory that you're not going to forge at every wedding around the world
No.
somewhere, right?
No.
Like it's
so uniquely Newfoundland.
Yeah, exactly. So
awesome, man. Thanks for coming in and talking to me.
Well, thank you for having me by, man.
If anyone wants to get screeched in, who's coming to Newfoundland, listening to this, head down to Christians.
I'm there every night at 11.
Right on. All right, buddy.
Cheers.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Curious Jord podcast. My name is Jordan, and in each episode, I sit down with an interesting person, and we have a conversation about their story or area of expertise. For past episodes, be sure to check out the archive on your podcast app, or have a gander at my website, which is www.curiousjord.com. On this week's episode, I sit down with Keith Vokey. Keith has an interesting job. He's a master of ceremonies of sorts. Keith welcomes honorary Newfoundlanders to our province via a provincial ritual known as a Screech. I won't go into too much detail because Keith lays it out quite nicely in the show. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Screech Master Keith Vokey.